He is the man patrolling the sidelines for Georgia State. Head coach Rob Lanier is with us as he gets ready for year two. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. And Rob, it is an absolute pleasure to have you. And my first question for you is, what was the one question that you got during your interview for this job that made you think more than any other?
I think the biggest challenge for me was just the idea of making the move itself, because my son, who had just finished his junior year in high school, had just won a state championship. My daughter, who had just finished her sophomore year, had just won a state championship in track and field. And we had moved so many years, so many times over the years, that I went into Knoxville hoping that would be where they would graduate high school, and that would sort of kind of be a home base for them, like my wife and I had. But my job has forced my family to make all of these moves, and I didn't think it'd be fair to make my kids, uproot again. And that was the biggest challenge. But the job went from being something that I had never considered to being something that I couldn't say no to.
Sure.
And so inside of that, I had to turn around and convey that to my children, who took it really hard. So that was the biggest challenge in the process, was how am I going to find the words to say to them? That was emotional. And then the actual move itself, the impact that it was going to have on their lives at that particular stage. Now, my son came down to Georgia and was a part of another state championship down here. So how many kids can say that? He's a freshman at Davidson now, so I'm really proud of the way he made the most of that journey. And then my daughter is acclimated and made herself at home. And we feel like as a staff and as a family that we're a part of something here at Georgia State that we wouldn't change if we could go back and do it again.
It's fascinating to see you make this move. And I was watching your introductory press conference, and I love the shout out to your wife, because you had said she's the MVP here. I mean, she's the one who had to be so supportive of you, and being the wife of a coach, like you said, traveling all around, it takes a very special someone to understand that. And so she certainly is the MVP of the household. And yeah, Rob, you're right up there as well. Now, you talked about recently, you've set the foundation after year one. What has made you come to that determination?
That the foundation is set?
Yes.
I think whenever you take over a program, there's a time frame where there's a individual vision at work that you're trying to convey to everyone in the program and to get them to internalize, right? And so when there is a point during the course of that first year where just with your staff, it goes from an individual vision to a staff vision. That the guys that I work alongside every day really start to buy into and understand exactly what we're trying to do from my lens. Mm-hmm. And once you get that, then you have the opportunity for the foundation to set in. And I saw that take place. And that is where a direct line of communication starts to take hold. Everyone's, speaking the same language, has the same message. The goals start to align themselves throughout the program. And so that to me is the foundation. And then trying to get your players on board is ongoing. You get a group of them and then it trickles down, and then you have turnover from year to year. But if you don't have that stability, that foundational vision in your staff, there's no chance of getting the players to grasp it. So once you get that staff cohesiveness, and I mean coaches, support staff, strength coach, trainer, all of those people. When everyone's connected there, then you can reach the players. And so we've reached that point where we've got our arms around most of the players, and it takes hold in our recruiting. What are we looking for? What kind of young man is going to connect with us and flourish here? All of those things start to take shape, but it starts with your staff, and that's where that foundational confidence comes from.
Rob Lanier joins us, head coach for Georgia State. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. I want to ask you about the staff and the excellence that they have exuded so far in just a moment. But if you were to give like a report card on year one and calculate what you were able to do with this team, despite the turnover that you alluded to, that you had to find scoring in other places, and most of the guys or a bulk of the guys from the season before had moved on, what would you grade year one for Coach Lanier?
Well, I would, as a future TV analyst or journalist, I would grade myself as a D.
Okay.
So I'm not going to get into the grading because that's not my deal.
Sure.
But you know what? I think as the year went on, I certainly felt a sense of progress.
Yeah. But
I never felt like we had reached a point where we had that championship substance about us as a program. I felt like from a building standpoint, we were just firmly entrenched in the middle of a journey. And I think every season is a journey unto itself. Every team is only together for one season. Even if you have the same players from year to year, you never have the same team twice. So you always have your program, and in each year you have a team that represents that program. And in year one, I felt like it was a good representation of the program that we are in the process of trying to build. And it goes back to your initial question about the foundation. And so we feel good that we are moving in the right direction. How far along the spectrum are we? Have we made it, from a program standpoint? And again, you can have a great program. It doesn't mean that year to year you're always going to have a great team. Sure. Because personnel changes, and sometimes you're young, sometimes you're a veteran, sometimes you're big, sometimes you're small, whatever. Sometimes you have injuries. But your program is the common denominator, and I think we set a great foundation that way. I think we put a good foot forward with our first team.
Nationally known basketball guru Paul Biancardi recently called you, quote, one of the best player evaluators in the business, and went on to say you have a great mind for the game, close quote. Why is he so right about those two assessments about you?
Well, because he's a former coach and he has to say good things about his former colleagues. He's doing the right thing. I don't know if he's right or not, but I cut my teeth at a level at a really young age, at age 24, as a recruiter. I was an assistant at St. Bonaventure University, which is located in beautiful Olean, New York, about an hour and a half from the nearest airport, which is in Buffalo. It's in an area called the Snow Belt. It's a great school with great people, with a small campus in a rural setting that happened at that time to be in the same conference that John Calipari was coaching UMass in, that John Chaney was coaching Temple in, Skip Prosser was at Xavier, Mike Jarvis was at GW. The league was phenomenal at that time. Virginia Tech was in the conference for a period during that time. And so one of the things we had to be good at, because we weren't going to outdo people when it came to official visits, because we didn't have the metropolitan area. Sure. We didn't have the community that you would necessarily associate with big time basketball, but we had good coaching. We had great place with great people, but we had to find people that fit our place and our mission and our vision. And so we had to do a good job finding guys that could flourish in our environment. And so as a young recruiter, I had to learn how to evaluate. I had to learn how to evaluate transcripts and players early on, and find guys that maybe other people might have missed on for some reason or another. Maybe they were a little bit shorter. Maybe they had to improve their jump shot. Maybe they had to put on weight. Any number of reasons. We had to find guys that loved the game, that were willing to work to get better, to kind of close the gap on whatever deficiencies they had. And I worked for a guy in Jim Barron at the time whose glass was always half full. So that always helped me go out and evaluate guys, because if I saw a guy who was really competitive and loved it, I thought Jim could get the most out of him. So that's something that has stuck with me throughout my career.
What's a coaching skill that you've made the biggest headway in this particular offseason compared to any other year during your coaching career?
Well, I think, full transparency, I was a head coach at a young age. And I went into a situation where I was in the NCAA tournament my first year. I was in the NIT my second year with wins over Providence and Villanova. You couldn't have told me I wasn't on my way, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I was humbled by that experience. And as a result of being humbled, like any human being, you experience a level of self-doubt. And I experienced that. And I think the biggest realization is a belief, and a real belief in myself.
Yeah.
And as a result of that belief, a greater conviction in empowering players, that I don't want the guys I coach to play with self-doubt unless they don't play hard. If they don't work hard, then I'm going to make them doubt themselves.
Sure.
But as long as they put in the investment, I'm going to empower them. And I think that's probably the biggest step I've taken as a coach, is that realization that my mission is to make sure that the players are empowered, not just as players, but as young people. And so we work hard at that. We're demanding on them, but the way we pay them back for what we're asking them to put in is to empower them.
In a recent interview, I also heard you talk about when you work hard and you give it all, there are no regrets. And so as a player, you can hold yourself to a level of esteem knowing that you gave it your all and that you don't have regrets. The way things, like you pointed out, ended for you at Siena, it would be understandable if you had this permeating restlessness to want to prove somewhere else that, look, you're a much better coach the way things ended there, that you have that ability and the acumen to thrive at a different location. How did you allow yourself to get into a space where you were comfortable easing your head coaching aspirations, and you went on to help out at Texas and Tennessee and Florida, to just name a few, and so to put your head coaching aspirations on hold for so long?
Well, it wasn't even a matter of putting them on hold. It was just putting them away. There's 353 Division I schools in the world. And when you're at Virginia or Florida or Texas or Tennessee, there's a number of schools that you wouldn't leave those places to go and coach, even as a head coach.
Good point.
There's also a number of schools that you can't get a job at as a head coach, coming from an assistant. I'm probably not going to get a Power 5 job. And then there's a regional, geographical context to that as well. So there's a small pool of opportunity to begin with, even if I hadn't been fired. Haven't been fired and haven't gotten an opportunity, getting a second chance is highly unlikely. So I had to put it away. And so I had made a decision at 35 or 36 that there's a good likelihood that I'll be an assistant. Doesn't mean I can't be a great assistant. Doesn't mean I can't continue to learn and grow as a coach. But this is going to be my job, and I want to be a part of a championship program in this capacity. And fortunately, my reputation remained strong over the course of time. And the black eye of being fired healed. Not in my mind. I felt capable, but as a candidate in the people's minds who make those decisions. In the NBA, they're talking about Brett Brown getting fired with the Sixers. Well, he's going to get another opportunity.
True.
Rick Carlisle is a great coach, but he's been fired before. People in the NBA, they get recycled all the time. They do have a fan base they have to be introduced to, but not to alumni, not to donors, not to all of that. They just so Mike D'Antoni, who's a proven good coach, he's going to get another shot,
Yeah.
whether it's with the Knicks or with the Rockets, what have you. In college basketball is different. If you get a chance and it doesn't work out, the likelihood of getting another chance is minimized. And so I had accepted that and I had reconciled that and I was okay with it. And because of that, I became a better assistant coach. And fortunately for me, I got an opportunity with a place that is the right fit for me, because there's very few places that I was going to leave Tennessee for. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity to meet with the people here. And this just happened to feel right. So right that I was willing to turn to my children, like I said at the top, and tell them that this is something that is best for our family.
It felt so right because already in year one, you had 19 wins with this Georgia State program. And you spoke about your kids and your son, and he's going to Davidson, like you just pointed out, really great high school basketball talent. And you spoke in a recent interview I was listening to where there was a question about why didn't he play for you, and you brought up the point that sometimes it can be toxic when you're the father of a player and he's on your staff, and you yourself and your son had come to a realization, a mature realization, that perhaps his best place to succeed is somewhere else, and that you took off more of a you backed away a little bit and let him thrive without you sort of taking over and overcoaching and all this stuff. So when you continue to monitor what he's doing on the court as he, dominates at Davidson and goes from there, how does a pep talk or any coaching advice differ when you talk to him than to when you talk to one of your own players?
Um, I don't think the communication is a whole lot different. The relationship is obviously different.
Yeah.
But I think with Emory, that's my son's name. I've been making my own decisions since I was 10 years old, for reasons unique to my upbringing. And that obviously wasn't his experience. But somewhere along the line, he was going to have to make his own decisions and become his own man. And the longer he stayed up under me, the longer it was going to take for that process to take hold. And so even with choosing a college, it had to be his decision. And a lot of people say they're going to leave it up to the kid, but we really didn't. And he made a great decision to go play with the Hall of Fame caliber coach at a place that really fits who he is as a person and as a student. And I got a lot of respect for him as a young man. He'll probably be a coach one day. I'm hoping he decides to do something different, but I really have a high level of respect for him as a person. He's one of the best people I know. So I do talk to him like a young man right now. And I can be tough on him at times because I do have a high standard for him. Not so much from a performance standpoint. That's Coach McKillop's job, is
Sure.
to place those demands on him now as a player. But in terms of as a young man and as a worker and as somebody that's going to walk the walk, if he says these are his aspirations, then I want his behavior and habits to mirror that. And that's no different than what I say to my players. If this is what you want to accomplish, I do have a sense of what it takes. And so I'm going to be honest with you about how your behavior aligns with your stated goals. And that's the same way we talk in general as a team. And so in that way, it's similar. It's just obviously a stronger connection when you're talking about your child.
Nothing more powerful than that straightforward transparency that is a hallmark of your coaching skill set. What's an example of you going out of your way to help a player during these extraordinary challenges that are taking place in the last couple months here, where you've really had an off the court impact on one of your guys during this particular college basketball offseason?
I don't know how qualified I am to speak to that. I think if you were talking to our guys individually, you might find some examples. I got an unbelievable staff of men, husbands, fathers. Um, Danica Johnson is our head trainer, our athletic trainer, and Jess Summy is our academic coordinator. I mean, these people really care about these young men, and we are hands-on with them. And I think we've made the appropriate level of effort to stay in constant communication with these guys with a consistent message about the fact that we're living in historic times. And these times require that we have a unique and consistent and focused approach to what we're doing. And I think because I'm so blessed to have a great circle of people who help the program, going back to your original question about the foundation, it's helped us to help them to try to have some perspective on not only the coronavirus and the effect that it's had on our day-to-day lives, but also because of the coronavirus, in some ways, the social justice issues that have become so prominent right now that we've all been paying attention to. And we want these young men to not allow these times to be lost on them, to not to be a typical guy, a young person, and act like you're being inconvenienced by history. To be aware that you're living in historic times, and it's going to require that you do things in a certain way so that when you look back on this, you'll be someone who made a difference instead of a victim. And so I don't know if there's any anecdotes there to speak to, but there has been a message. But the message can only take hold if it's a collective message from our organization, right? And I think that's what we've been fortunate to have, and that's the approach we've tried to take.
That was really powerful, Coach. And you talked a little bit about your assistants and your support staff. As far as your assistants and Cliff Warren and Chris Kreider and Jarvis Hayes, what is it about what they do that vault this program in such a big way?
Well, they all embody the number one quality, which is, we've got 3 core values that govern everything we do. We talk about it a lot. Anybody that's heard me talk, it's not a slogan. It's real stuff. I think it's really important. And I think those 3 guys, the number one core value that governs what we do is humility. And those 3 guys embody that particular characteristic. Cliff Warren is the all-time winningest coach at Jacksonville University. There's not many coaches who have an assistant on their staff who can boast that accolade. Chris Kreider is one of the best recruiters and one of the hardest workers that I've ever been around. And I would say he's one of the best in the country. And Jarvis Hayes brings such a unique basketball background to our program that it's such a privilege for our young guys to be exposed to this man. And what they all have in common is that they're humble, that the program comes first, that they serve other people, and they know that this is an opportunity that we have. And we all have a short window of time to make the most of it. And that's the message that I want our players to get, and they're getting it from 3 unbelievable men who are all great fathers, loyal husbands, and tremendous basketball minds. So our guys are blessed to have that group of men around them every day. And I'm fortunate as a coach to have those guys in my corner.
Well, and they're fortunate to have you in their corner, and that humility that you speak of as it relates to your assistants and your players is a direct reflection on you and the points that you want to get across, the message you want to send. And so you as well deserve to be commended. My final question for you, Coach, and I believe today is the first day of Georgia State opening up school in the fall and kids coming on campus. How much hands-on in-person work, or what's the timeline for that for you to get back onto the court with your guys and start taking part in some basketball activities?
Yeah, we're doing it now, but we brought them back July 20th. And we brought them back at that point because we figured there'd be some bumps in the road
Sure.
with trying to get organized. And so we wanted a window of time to try to develop a routine, if you will, that could sustain itself throughout the course of the academic year. When this hit back in March, I was very adamant and clear that I didn't want these guys working on their games. I didn't want them to feel the pressure from us to come back here in game shape.
Okay.
The guys who had access to resources, we wanted them to use it. But I did not want young people going out, playing pickup, shirts and skins, being in groups, doing things that can put them in harm's way and then bring that back into their households where they could affect mom or dad or aunt or grandma or et cetera. So not knowing everyone's individual situation, I didn't want the energy from us to be work on your game, work on your game, work on your game. So because of that, it was built into their return that they would be out of shape. And I wanted them to know that I'd be okay with that. And that the plan would be to gradually work our way back into a rhythm where we could actually start doing the kind of things that might prepare you for a season if we have one. But we're going to take it slowly, one day at a time, small groups, one coach, one player. And then when the academic year starts, like today, whether your classes are online or in person, we're going to do the classes that are online, we're going to do them during the day here as though you were in class.
Sure.
And we're going to function with an academic day. We're not going to give you a laptop and say, go back to your dorm and do your work. We're going to have an academic day, whether it's in person or online. And then we're going to make basketball a part of your day. And we're going to try to spend as much time together as we can. And so we don't want to monopolize their time, but we kind of do. we want to create a theoretical bubble of our own with our schedule, and try to control that as much as we can, and ask them to be patient with their social lives. That's going to take a hit because, like I mentioned, we live in historic times, and we're going to have to do some things differently. And the thing that is going to have to be sacrificed the most is the social piece. You're going to have to be patient and say, because things are different than at any other time that it's been in anyone's life for over 100 years, we're going to have to say, all right, something's going to take a hit here. It can't be academics. We don't want it to be basketball. It's going to have to be social.
Sure.
And so in order to help them with that, we're going to have to fill that time with something. And we're going to fill it with basketball in school.
And the more they get that message, the quicker they'll get back to playing games and getting the season going. And with what you're saying, Coach, it's spot on. And, if I had any eligibility, I think I'd want to play for you. Rob Lanier, head coach for Georgia State, goes into year 2. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. And Rob, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun, super inspiring, super enlightening. And I'm excited for you to get back on the court with your guys, as you guys have been doing, and continue to vault this program in the direction that I have all the confidence in the world you will do.
I appreciate you. Good to meet you, Bryan.